They say time never forgets. What we sow in pride often returns to us in humility. This is not just a story of love lost and found. It is the story of a woman who abandoned her husband and little son when fortune turned against him, and how life, in its quiet wisdom, turned the table to teach her what true wealth really means. In the heart of Enugu City lived a man named Vincent Ague, a man once known for his generosity, charm, and brilliance. He owned Vintech Construction Limited, one of the largest construction companies in the region, and his name opened doors in the corridors of power. People said, "If you meet Vincent, your luck will change." He was that kind of man, always giving, always smiling, never too proud to help. And by his side was Lillian, his wife, elegant, beautiful, and graceful like the sunrise over the hills. They lived a soft life and many envied them. Daniel, their son, lacked nothing. As the only child born into a wealthy family, he was the family darling. Lillian had everything money could buy. She always bragged about how much her husband spends on her and how much they loved each other. Her close friends wished they had husbands that could spoil and pamper them the same way Vincent spoils her. In fact, Vincent was everything a woman could pray for, until fortune tested their love. The night it all began, rain fell heavily over the city of Enugu. The sound of thunder rolled across the city. Vincent sat in his study, papers scattered across the table. He had just received the worst news of his life. His most trusted business partner, in charge of accounts, Mr. Johnson, whom he had helped rise from nothing, had vanished with all the company's funds. Millions gone. Investments frozen. And projects collapsing. Vincent sat alone in his study, speechless, deeply thinking why his trusted staff Mr. Johnson could steal from him. God, how could this happen? After everything I've done for Johnson? The next morning, newspapers screamed. Vintech Construction Company declares bankruptcy. Assets under investigation. His phones wouldn't stop ringing. Banks demanded payment. Government contracts were withdrawn. Friends who once toasted to his success now whispered about his downfall. When he came home that evening, Lillian was sitting in the living room, her phone in hand, scrolling through social media. She looked up, her tone sharp. "Vincent, is it true? People are saying you've lost everything." He stood looking, exhausted. "It's true. But I will bounce back. I just need some time to fix things." She dropped the phone and stood up facing him. "Time? How long, Vincent? You promised me we would live comfortably forever. What am I supposed to tell my friends? That my husband is broke?" He looked at her with pleading eyes. "Lillian, please. I'm still the same man. It's too early to panic. We will survive this." But she hissed. "You don't understand, do you? I didn't sign up for poverty. I can't live like a beggar." Their son, Daniel, barely 6 years old, walked into the room clutching a small toy car. "Daddy, are we still going to the park this weekend?" Vincent forced a smile. "Of course, my boy." But Lillian snapped. "Daniel, go to your room." When the boy ran off, she turned to Vincent again, voice trembling with anger. "I can't raise a child in this kind of uncertainty. You need to do something, and do it fast." He looked at her, heartbreaking. "Lillian, I built this home with my sweat. All I need is your support, not your shame." She scoffed. "Support? For a man who won't be able to even pay his workers any moment from now?" That night, while Vincent was fast asleep, Lillian stayed awake, scrolling through photos of her friends, women who flaunted designer bags and champagne smiles. And there, in the glow of her phone, pride whispered a dangerous lie. "You deserve better." Days turned to weeks, and the weight of debt pressed harder. The bank officials came in to recoup the unpaid loan. The luxury cars and the mansion was auctioned to cover the loans. Vincent moved his family into a smaller, modest house. It was humble but decent. But to Lillian, it felt like prison. She stopped wearing her wedding ring and stopped cooking for the family. Every day, her words became daggers to Vincent's heart. "You brought me down, Vincent. I was a queen before I met you." She often reminded him. Days turned into weeks, and Lillian's frustration grew like weeds in an untended garden. She began spending more time with her friend Juliana, a flamboyant woman who owned a high-end boutique. Juliana would often brag about her rich husband, her wigs, her vacations to New York and other cities in the United States of America. "Lillian, my dear," Juliana teased one afternoon, "you're too fine to be suffering with a broke man. Leave that man before you grow old in poverty. Don't say I didn't warn you." The seed was planted. One night, after yet another argument, Lillian made her final decision. Without any warning, she packed her bag in silence, ready to walk out. When Vincent walked into the room, she turned with cold eyes. He froze. "Lillian," he asked, "are you leaving me? I can't do this anymore. You've failed me. I'm leaving." "But Daniel needs his mother," Vincent pleaded. "No, don't drag a child into this misery. You, take care of him, after all, he is your son too. Lillian, we can rebuild together. Please, don't go." "No, Vincent. I'm leaving. I can't do this anymore. I deserve more than this life of struggle. You're a good man, but I need more than a good man." He stood still, speechless. "So you're leaving me, after everything?" She nodded, and without shame, she said, "When you rise again, if you ever do, remember that I once gave you the chance. But right now, I need to choose myself." She turned and walked out, her heels clicking like punctuation marks on the floor of their broken dreams. "Lillian," he said softly, "you're walking out on love, not poverty." But she didn't look back. Vincent stood there, his heart shattering into pieces. He could hear little Daniel's voice from the doorway. "Daddy, where is Mommy going?" He looked at Daniel and whispered, "She just needs time, my boy. But I promise, I will never leave you." That night, Vincent sat alone on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The echoes of her footsteps still haunted the room. He whispered a short prayer. "God, if this pain is my lesson, then let it be worth it one day." And somewhere in the dark, destiny smiled, for the story of loss had only just begun, and the story of redemption was already being written. They say the road that shines in the morning may lead to darkness by nightfall. And sometimes, the things we run toward in search of comfort end up being the very chains that bind us. When Lillian left her husband, she believed she was walking into a brighter tomorrow. She moved into the city center, where life was louder, faster, and painted in the colors of vanity. She got a small apartment in a new neighborhood, though nothing compared to the mansion she had once called home, but enough to give her the illusion of independence. Her old friends welcomed her at first, women who laughed loud and dressed louder, sipping imported wine as they celebrated with her for dumping her struggling husband. "Ah, Lillian," one of them said. "You did well to leave that man before he dragged you down completely. These men, once they are broke, they lose value." Lillian laughed, though something inside her chest ached quietly. She told herself it was freedom. But freedom that lacks peace is only another kind of prison. Weeks turned into months. Lillian got a job at a friend's boutique, selling luxury clothes to rich women, many of whom reminded her of the person she used to be. She would stand behind the counter, watching older women as they bragged about their husbands' businesses, their vacations, their cars. At her apartment at night, she would sit alone, scrolling through social media, watching her past life parade before her eyes. One day she met a man named Desmond, at the boutique. He was charming, confident, and successful. At least he drove a Lexus SUV, wore expensive watches, and spoke like someone who had seen the world. He told Lillian she was too beautiful to be working behind a counter. He promised her comfort, vacations, and a future without struggle. And she believed him. Lillian boasted to her friends of her new catch. "Girls, guess what? My Desmond is taking me to London next month on vacation. He is a real man. That is what we ate saying. You are too beautiful to endure poverty. You made a wise decision, girl," one of them said. For months, she lived in the warmth of his attention, enjoying outings with him. Until she discovered that Desmond was married with kids, and his business trips were just excuses to escape his family. The day she found out, she sat in her room at night, staring at her phone in silence. It was as though the walls around her began to whisper. "You left gold for glitter, Lillian." She gazed at her phone once again and looked at an old picture, Vincent, smiling with little Daniel in his arms. Her thumb hovered over the call button, but pride stopped her. "No," she whispered. "He will think I regret leaving. I'm not going back." And so, she swallowed her pain like a bitter seed. Meanwhile, on the other side, Vincent struggled daily. He sold his last car and started working as a site supervisor for a small construction firm. A man who once commanded hundreds now taking orders from boys he had trained. Yet through it all, he never complained. Every morning, he walked Daniel to school, holding him, whispering encouragements like prayers. "My son, you must never give up. Remember, what a man loses on earth, he can regain with faith." At night, they would sit together. Daniel would be doing his homework while Vincent guided him. Sometimes, neighbors who knew him previously would mock him. "That's the great Vincent, the CEO of Vintech Holdings, reduced to this." But he smiled. He knew something they didn't, that a man who keeps his dignity in his lowest moment has already begun to rise. And so, in quiet perseverance, the seed of his comeback was taking root. One afternoon, as he walked home from work, a sleek black SUV approached behind him. Moments later the vehicle slowed down beside him. "Vincent," a voice called. He turned, and his eyes widened in shock. "Charlie." It was his old friend Charles. A man he once helped years ago when he was a struggling contractor. Vincent had given him financial support and even connected him to clients. Now Charles was a wealthy businessman with contracts across the country. "Ha! My chairman," Charles exclaimed, standing face to face with him. "I've been searching for you. What happened? Why didn't you call me?" Vincent smiled faintly. "Ah, my brother, life happened. I didn't want to burden anyone with my story." "Burden?" Charles exclaimed. "You changed my life, you made me what I am today. I wouldn't be here today if not for you. Get into the car, I am taking you home." That night, Charles took him and Daniel out for dinner at a nice restaurant, the first decent meal they had eaten in months. The next day Charles took Vincent out for a drink. As they were chatting, he said, "I'm giving you a new start. You'll be my company's operations manager. Your job starts tomorrow." Vincent smiled. "Charles, I don't know how to thank you." Charles smiled too. "Just promise me you will never stop helping people. You taught me that." A few days after he started his new job as operations manager in Charles' company, Vincent told his son Daniel of the good news and he was happy. The day Vincent got his first salary as operations manager after 1 month with Charles, that night, he took Daniel out for a dinner. As they had the good time together, the boy looked up at his father and asked softly, "Daddy, does this mean we are rich again?" Vincent chuckled. "Not yet, my son. But we're blessed again. And that's even better." He whispered under his breath, "Thank you, God, for remembering us." And somewhere, far across the city, Lillian stared at her reflection in the mirror, her face worried and her spirit restless. She did not know that the same man she had abandoned was rising again, and the same son she left behind was growing strong without a mother. Because, as the elders say, the palm tree that bends in the storm often stands taller when the storm is gone. And when you plant kindness, it may take years to grow, but when it blossoms, it shades your entire life. And so it was for Vincent Ague. The man who once lost everything, now slowly rediscovering his worth through the mercy of a friend. Working under Charles' company was not easy. Vincent had to start from the ground up, supervising projects, managing stubborn site workers, and reporting to younger men who barely knew his history. But he worked with humility. When new workers mocked him, saying, "He behaves like he had never seen money before," he would simply smile and reply, "Pride is what buries a man before his time. Just work hard. You'll understand one day." His humility became his strength. Charles noticed. And within a year, he made Vincent the regional director of his construction firm. Under Vincent's management, the company's profits soared. He introduced fair wages, ensured safety on site, and built trust among the workers. Soon, government contracts began to roll in. Vincent was once again known in the corridors of power, but this time, his glory was not borrowed from wealth. It came from integrity. One afternoon, Charles called him into his office. "Brother, you've done more for me than I ever expected. I want you to own part of the company." He handed Vincent a legal document transferring 40% ownership of the firm to him. Vincent's hands trembled. "Charles, this is too much. I can't." But Charles interrupted gently. "Don't say no. You once gave me everything when I had nothing. This is my way of returning the favor." Vincent's face was covered with emotions. "May God multiply you beyond measure. You've not just restored my life, you've restored my hope," he said. A few days later, he drove home in a new car, not a luxury ride, but a symbol of dignity regained. When he pulled up to his modest house, little Daniel, now 10 years old, standing by his side shouted, "Daddy, Daddy, is this your car?" Vincent looked at him. "Yes, my son. It's ours." Daniel asked, "Does this mean Mommy will come back now?" Vincent was quiet for a second, then he smiled softly. "My boy, if she ever comes, we'll welcome her with peace. But for now, we move forward." Those words became his mantra. We move forward. In no time, Vincent fully bounced back financially, working in partnership with Charles. His name rang bell in the construction industry once again. Years flowed like a calm river. Daniel grew into a brilliant young man, disciplined, focused, and full of compassion. He studied hard, earning a scholarship to the university, where he majored in medicine. Whenever his father visited the campus, he would beam with pride. "Daniel, my son, remember, being great is not about what you have, but how many hearts you heal." Daniel would nod humbly. "Yes, Daddy. I will make you proud." He didn't just study to succeed, he studied to serve. He volunteered in local clinics, treated children for free, and cared for the elderly. People began to call him Doctor of the Poor. One evening, he told his father, "Daddy, one day, I will build a hospital, not for the rich, but for those who have no one." Vincent smiled. "That's my boy. You've inherited not my wealth, but my heart, and that's the greatest inheritance a man can give." Daniel graduated with distinction. Vincent celebrated his achievement. He realized that Daniel was destined for greatness. The same Daniel whose mother left to chase vanity will one day heal nations. He thought of Lillian, wondering where life had taken her, hoping she was still alive and well. He thought of Lillian, wondering where life had taken her, hoping she was still alive and well. He didn't hate her anymore. His pain had become peace. Sometimes, he would pray softly, "God, wherever she is, may she find forgiveness before it is too late." But fate, as it always does, was listening, preparing its next move. A few years later, Vincent and Daniel opened Danvin Care Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to helping widows, orphans, and students in need. They distributed food and paid school fees for children. News of their kindness spread across the city and beyond. People began to whisper again, "Do you know that man? That's Vincent Ague, the one who lost everything and rose again." But through it all, he remained humble. He often said to himself, "God didn't lift me so I could sit on gold. He lifted me so I could lift others." Daniel, now a doctor in a major hospital, carried the same light, gentle, kind, and merciful. He had become everything his father dreamed of. In another part of the city, Lillian's world had crumbled completely. After years of chasing men and money, she had nothing left. Her so-called friends vanished. Her beauty, once her pride, faded under the weight of time and tears. She now lived alone in a small room, selling second-hand clothes in the market just to survive. Her health began to fail, constant headaches, weak vision, and unending fatigue. Doctors said she had a heart condition and needed surgery urgently. But she had no one, no husband, no child, and no family to help her. One night, she sat by her room, whispering bitterly, and cried, "God, why me? Why have you forgotten me?" But the truth was, God had not forgotten her. He was simply waiting for her to remember where she came from. And soon, he would bring her face to face with the two hearts she had once abandoned, not for vengeance, but for mercy. Because, as the elders say, the same river you spit into may one day be the only one with water to quench your thirst. They say the child you lift in patience may one day lift your entire name in honor. And truly, from the ashes of pain, Vincent's son rose like the morning sun after a long night of rain. Years had rolled by like pages of an old diary. Daniel Ague, tall, calm, and soft-spoken, had become one of the most respected doctors in the region. He headed the Community Health Division at Graceview Medical Center, one of city's top hospitals. But what set him apart was not his position, it was his heart. He refused to turn anyone away, whether rich or poor. Patients often whispered, "That doctor, he treats people like family." To Daniel, healing was not just a profession, it was a ministry of love. And behind that love was the silent strength of his father, who had molded him with prayers, discipline, and humility. One cool morning, he smiled standing in front of Danvin Care Foundation. Beside him stood his proud father, Vincent. "My son," Vincent said, "do you know why this place is special?" Daniel nodded with a smile. "Because it will serve those who cannot pay." Vincent chuckled softly. "Yes, but also because it carries our story. A home built from brokenness." "But father, it's all made possible because of you, the man who never stopped believing." Vincent blinked fast, fighting tears. And he whispered, "God, you are faithful." Daniel became a symbol of hope for many. When interviewed by journalists, he would say, "My father taught me that true success is not how high you climb, but how many people rise because you did." The city loved him. Even government officials consulted him for public health initiatives. Yet, despite his success, Daniel lived simply. One weekend, he and Vincent, his father, sat in the backyard garden, sipping drink and talking about life. "Daddy," Daniel said one evening, "do you ever miss her?" "Who?" "Mommy." There was silence for a while. Then Vincent smiled, his eyes soft. "I do. But not with pain anymore. I pray for her instead." That's what healing truly means. Daniel nodded slowly. "If I ever meet her, I won't hate her either. I will just ask her why." Vincent smiled faintly. "My son, that's why you will live long. A heart that forgives never runs dry." As life often does, peace began to test its own strength. At Danvin Care Center, single mothers, widows, and abandoned children were taken care of. It was Daniel's way of healing the wounds life had once inflicted on him. To the public, he was a symbol of generosity. But deep within, Daniel still carried an unanswered question, the face of the woman who had walked away from him and his father when he was barely 4 years old. His heart whispers a question that had no answer. Why did she leave? One fateful afternoon, Daniel was reviewing patient files in his office when a nurse rushed in, breathless. "Doctor, emergency at Ward 3, new patient, female, in her late 50s, she collapsed in the market. Her blood pressure is dangerously low." Daniel grabbed his stethoscope and hurried to the ward. The woman lay unconscious, frail, her face pale and lined with exhaustion. Daniel immediately began resuscitation. "BP 9060, we need 4 fluids, now." His team moved swiftly, responding to his calm authority. Within minutes, the woman's breathing stabilized. He turned to the nurse. "Prepare for full blood work and ECG. And check if she has any ID." The nurse nodded and began rummaging through her bag. Moments later, "Doctor, I didn't find any ID card." Then he stared at the woman's face closely, something familiar stirred. Her nose. Her chin. The faint dimple when she breathed. But he simply continued treating her like every other patient. He whispered to himself, "When she wakes she will identify herself." For 3 days, Lillian remained unconscious. Daniel visited her bedside every morning, silently studying her condition. On the 4th morning, she opened her eyes slowly. Her voice was faint. Where am I?" "You're at Graceview Medical Center," Daniel said gently. "You collapsed in the market. But you're safe now." "Thank you, doctor." "You're welcome, madam." He calmly responded. For a moment, she felt something familiar about his voice, but her mind was too clouded with pain. Daniel turned to the nurse. "Please prepare her for the cardiologist's review. We'll need to discuss surgery options soon." For some reason, the face of the sick woman looked hauntingly familiar. He couldn't explain it, but something inside him tightened. That night, as he lay in bed, sleep refused to come. The woman's face kept flashing before him. "Why do I feel this way?" he murmured. "She's just another patient, isn't she?" The next day, Daniel sat quietly at the dining table. His father noticed his unease. "My son, you look troubled. What's the matter?" Daniel hesitated, then finally responded. "Daddy, there is this woman that was admitted to the hospital few days ago. She was brought into the hospital very sick, heart problem. I treated her myself." "Then what is the problem?" Vincent asked. "No ID card found in her bag. I will try to get her full name, once she gets stronger. Daddy, I think Danvin Care Foundation should pay for her surgery. There is something about her that I can't explain." For a moment, silence filled the room. The air felt heavier. Vincent leaned back slowly. "Okay. I will visit your hospital tomorrow and see her." The next morning, Vincent accompanied Daniel to the hospital to see the sick woman, unaware of what awaited him. The moment they stepped into the ward, Lillian looked up weakly. Her eyes widened. Her lips quivered. "Vincent," she whispered in disbelief. Vincent froze, stunned beyond words. "Lillian," he gasped, his voice trembling. Is this truly you?" Daniel looked between them in confusion. "Wait, Dad, you know her?" Vincent's heart bled as years of buried pain resurfaced. "Son, this woman, this is your mother." Daniel felt his chest tighten. The air seemed to vanish from the room. He took a step back, staring at the woman who had left him in tears all those years ago. Lillian tried to speak, her voice breaking. "Daniel, my son." "Please don't call me your son," he interrupted, holding up a trembling hand. His eyes glistened. "You left us to die. You left him, your husband, to suffer. Do you have any idea what we went through?" Her sobs filled the room. "I was young, foolish, blinded by the world's lies. I thought money was everything. I didn't know I was losing my soul." Vincent standing next to his son. "Daniel," he said softly, "forgiveness is the only medicine that heals pain. If we could endure the past, then maybe we can rewrite the future." Daniel's throat tightened. The image of his father struggling, working day and night to raise him, flashed before his eyes. Then he looked at the woman before him, weak, broken, and desperate. After a long silence, Daniel whispered, "You don't deserve my forgiveness, but maybe you deserve a chance to live long enough to find it." He turned to the nurse. "Tell the secretary to approve her surgery. I will handle the rest. Prepare the theater room. We shall proceed with the surgery immediately." Lillian broke down in tears as they wheeled her away. The surgery took hours. Vincent waited outside the operating theater, lost in thought. When the doctor Daniel finally emerged, he smiled. The surgery was successful. "She's stable now." Vincent exhaled deeply, whispering, "Thank you, God." A few days later, Vincent and Daniel returned to see her. Lillian's face lit up weakly when she saw him. "Daniel," she murmured, "I don't deserve your kindness." He shook his head gently. "You don't owe me anything. You owe yourself a better ending." Tears filled her eyes. "You saved me, the same son I abandoned." He looked at her, his tone calm but firm. "Because once, a man I called father told me never to let bitterness define me. That man was the reason I became who I am today." She sat up with a smile, her gaze at Vincent, who smiled faintly at her. "I forgave you long ago, Lillian," he said softly. "Not for you, but for my peace. What matters now is that Daniel chose compassion over revenge. That means our pain wasn't wasted." Months later, Lillian recovered fully, looking fresh and younger. She began volunteering at the foundation, helping single mothers and abandoned children. One afternoon, as Daniel watched her from afar, Vincent by his side. "You see, son," he said with a faint smile, "life has a strange way of bringing us back to the lessons we refused to learn. She left to chase the world, but fate brought her back, not for punishment, but for redemption." Daniel nodded quietly. "And I'm glad I didn't let her die a stranger." The boy once abandoned had become the man who saved the one who left him. Indeed, the return of fate had rewritten their story, not with revenge, but with mercy. Thanks for watching. Remain blessed.